begins in 1989 with the fall of the Berlin Wall and then the collapse of the Soviet Union. And politically, the theme of that age is liberal democracy. It's the moment where new democracies emerge in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia, and perhaps most famously for people in this room, in Central and Eastern Europe. It's the beginning of the journey of countries like Lithuania and Romania from being pretty poor autocratic states to what they are today. In fact, from 1988 to 2003, the number of democracies in the world literally doubles. Mm-hmm. In fact, if we'd continued on that track, every country in the world today would be a democracy. The fourth and most important change is the change in the media technology landscape. Because this decade is the moment where Twitter is founded and launched, when Facebook gets off the ground, and where we see in the Arab Spring a Facebook revolution. And what the Facebook revolution suddenly reveals is a politics which is chaotic, dissolves borders, and manages in the most extraordinary ways to polarize. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that suddenly for the first time, somebody sets themselves alight in a small town in Tunisia, an event which probably wouldn't have got out of that small town in Tunisia. But thanks to the new social media landscape, it triggers a revolution in Tunisia, then a revolution in Libya, then a revolution in Egypt, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Bahrain, and Yemen. But that's not the end of this chaos. Like the butterfly flapping its wings and pushing a storm across the Atlantic, suddenly 3 million refugees are pushed from Syria into Turkey. 1 million of those refugees are pushed across the Mediterranean into Europe. And now we have the drivers of far-right populism and anti-immigration sentiment happening in Europe. So you can almost draw a direct line between somebody setting themselves alight in a small town in Tunisia and the fact that Nigel Farage and Reform are now leading the opinion polls here in the United Kingdom. The key thing is that geopolitics matters. The world matters in a way that would have been very surprising even a few years ago. It doesn't matter whether you're, working in a company, whether you're working in government, whether you're working in media. Suddenly, as Kirsty says, we're open to change. And I want you to think about the world in terms of that change. So begin with the world from 1989 to 2004, and then we'll take it from that world to the world of the second Trump. And putting the emphasis on the second Trump, because the second Trump is very, very different to the first Donald, putting geopolitics at the heart of your business, right? It's the one lesson of COVID and the Russian invasion of Ukraine is that markets and businesses and supply chains are totally transformed by what would have been in the 1990s obscure geopolitical events at the other end of the world suddenly turn out to bankrupt companies, destroy your supply chains, or transform the fortunes, right? The same is true with AI. I mean, who would have thought that Anthropic's new release of a piece of software could suddenly wipe 8% off the share price of Adobe almost overnight, right? So we're entering a world in which, from a business point of view, geopolitics needs to be at the center. There is an entire American fleet that has sailed towards Iran. They now have more naval vessels and aircraft around Iran than they had around Venezuela before the strike. They are under huge pressure to intervene in Iran, and if that happens, again, many things will happen which will change your businesses. The price of oil will change, supply chains will be disrupted, the Straits of Hormuz will be disrupted, investments in the Gulf will be altered. So let's keep encouraging people to get out of the cliches back to the big picture, and I think Kirsty's challenge around Russia is a very good example of that problem.